In 1976, 46 of the 50 United States still permitted teachers to paddle children inside the school building. These rules raised America's children for almost a full generation, and most parents thanked the school for it. Number 23 on this list could get a boy sent home for the length of his sideburns before homeroom even began. Number 18 was a piece of furniture every classroom owned and nobody questioned. Number 7 on this list was read aloud, by name, in front of the whole class every 6 weeks. The detail no one mentions about 1973 is how ordinary all of it was. None of these rules were ever illegal then. The courts caught up later. Hit subscribe and stick with us. Here are 25 strict 1970s school rules that would land a teacher in handcuffs today. Number 25. Mandatory home economics for girls only. Walking down the basement hallway of a public junior high in Akron, Ohio in 1973, a 14-year-old daughter of a steelworker would smell scorched butter and chalk dust the second she turned the corner. Girls were marched to home EC in the basement. Boys were marched to shop class one floor up. Nobody chose. The mother in Akron had taken the same class in 1948. The daughter sliced onions, kneaded biscuit dough, and stirred a roux while the boys cut pine planks overhead. The grade went on the same transcript a college admissions office would read. Title IX of the Education Amendments had been signed in June of 1972, but enforcement was slow, and most school districts kept the split schedules running through the late 70s. Federal regulators were still drafting the language. Title IX would shut that schedule down before homeroom. Number 24. Public paddling in the principal's office. The door stayed open on purpose. A child in a public elementary in Houston in 1974 was sent to the principal, bent over the desk, and struck 3 times with a wooden paddle drilled with holes to reduce wind resistance. Other students in the hallway could hear it. That was the point. The 1977 Supreme Court ruling in Ingram v. Wright, a Florida case involving a junior high paddling that left a student unable to sit for days, declared corporal punishment in public schools constitutional under the 8th Amendment. School paddles hung from hooks behind principals' desks in Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, and 20 more states well into the 1980s. The mother who picked up that child after school in Houston signed the discipline slip without reading it, and at home that night she peeled potatoes and stirred the gravy while the child sat with the welt on his bottom. Today, a teacher who struck a child with a wooden paddle in 33 states would be charged with battery before 5th period. Number 23. Hair length inspections for boys. Standing outside the boys' bathroom, every 10th grader waited his turn for the vice principal to measure the back of his collar. Hair touching the shirt collar was a code violation. Hair covering the earlobe was a code violation. Sideburns past the bottom of the ear were a code violation. The penalty was a trip to the school barber or suspension until the haircut was done. Federal courts heard dozens of these cases through the early 70s. A school administrator measuring a teenage child's hair with a ruler today would trigger a First Amendment lawsuit. The barber chair sat empty by 1985. Number 22. Hand stamping at the lunch line. "Hold out your hand," the lunch aide said. A child who had paid the standard fee at a public elementary in Pittsburgh in 1975 got a blue smiley face on the back of the hand. A child on the federal free lunch program got a red star. A child with neither got nothing, and the line knew it. The stamp stayed on through 5th period, through recess, through the bus ride home. Soap took 10 minutes that evening to lift the ink. The 1974 Russo Amendments to the National School Lunch Act already forbade identifying free lunch recipients in a discriminatory way. Schools ignored it. By the bus stop, the kids with red stars walked separately from the kids with blue smiley faces. Today, the USDA would pull federal lunch funding from any district running a hand stamp line. Number 21. Skirt-length rulers at the homeroom door. Kneeling on the linoleum just inside the homeroom door of a junior high in Cleveland in 1972, every girl in 7th grade waited her turn while the teacher held a ruler against the back of her knee. Skirts had to touch the kneecap. A hemline 3 inches above the knee got the child sent home to change. Absence marked unexcused. Her mother left the receptionist's desk at the doctor's office and drove home for a fresh skirt before lunch. Pantsuits were briefly allowed in 1973, then briefly banned in 1974, then allowed again the following spring. The rules shifted with the principal's mood and the school board's quarterly meeting. Tinker versus Des Moines, the 1969 Supreme Court case, had already established that students did not shed their rights at the schoolhouse gate. Courts began striking down skirt rules through the late 70s. A teacher who measured a 13-year-old's hemline today would face a sexual harassment complaint. The ruler stays in the drawer. Number 20. Mandatory shop class for boys. The metal shop teacher's beard was always sawdust-flecked. The air in the room smelled of cutting oil and burnt copper, and the noise of the bandsaw never quite stopped. Boys at the same junior high were sent to wood shop, metal shop, and auto shop in 7th through 9th grade in rotating 6-week blocks. They learned to use a bandsaw, a drill press, and a metal lathe before they turned 14. Safety glasses were optional in some districts and physically unavailable in others. A boy who asked to take home economics instead, where the older sister sliced onions and stirred a roux, was told the schedule did not permit it. Federal Title IX regulations issued in 1975 specifically required schools to open both classes to both genders. Compliance dragged on across most districts through the decade. Title IX took the rest. Number 19. The Teacher's Smoking Lounge. The faculty lounge at a public junior high in Cleveland, Ohio, in 1974 was a windowless room with 2 coffee pots, 3 vinyl chairs, a table covered in cigarette burns, and a glass ashtray on every surface. The coffee brewed from 6 in the morning. Teachers smoked between classes. They smoked during lunch. The English teacher, a woman in her 40s named on the staff list as Mrs. Halloran, smoked a pack of Pall Malls a day and walked back into a room of 30 children with the smell on her cardigan. The math teacher, a man in his 50s, smoked Marlboros at 45 cents a pack and kept the matchbooks in a coffee tin on the windowsill. The students in the room next door breathed it all. A 1976 study by the American Lung Association found measurable smoke residue in classrooms directly adjacent to faculty lounges in 38% of surveyed schools. The children in those rooms had headaches by third period and red eyes by the time the bus arrived. School custodians repainted the lounge walls every 2 years because the cigarette smoke turned the eggshell finish to a butter yellow within 24 months. The Surgeon General's report on the health consequences of smoking had been published in 1964. 12 years later, the lounge still kept 3 cartons of Marlboros in the supply cabinet. The Federal Pro-Children Act of 1994 finally outlawed smoking in any building used for routine education of children. OSHA today classifies indoor secondhand smoke in a workplace shared with minors as a Class A carcinogen exposure. State labor codes treat continued violation as grounds for license revocation. A teacher who lit a Pall Mall in a faculty lounge today would be on administrative leave by the end of the period. Number 18. The dunce stool in the corner. "Go put your nose against the wall," the teacher said. In a first-grade classroom in rural Indiana in 1973, the corner stool had a name. The teacher called it the thinking chair. The other 6-year-olds called it the dunce stool. A child who could not read aloud, who fidgeted, who could not sit still, who answered wrong twice in a row, was sent to it. The child sat facing the wall for the rest of the lesson. Some teachers added a paper hat. Most did not need to. The shame did the work without props. Number 18 carried no federal regulation in 1973. State boards of education today classify public humiliation in elementary classrooms as a welfare statute violation. 3 states still hold out. Number 17. Locker searches without notice. Walking down a hallway in 1976, a child would pass a vice principal with a master key sliding lockers open at random. Textbooks, gym shorts, and notebooks were spread across the floor for inspection. No warrant, no parental notice, no reason given. Lockers were school property, the administration argued, and what the school owned, the school could search. The 1985 Supreme Court ruling in New Jersey versus TLO set a reasonable suspicion standard, But through the 70s, the rule was simpler. The vice principal had a key. The vice principal could look. A school administrator who emptied a locker without cause today would face a Fourth Amendment lawsuit. The case would settle by the next bell. Number 16. The flag salute with no opt-out. Standing in a line outside the principal's office at a suburban Detroit junior high in 1974, a 13-year-old waited his turn to explain why he had stayed seated during the pledge. The morning announcement included the Pledge of Allegiance, the school prayer, and a moment of silence in that order before the absence sheet ever came out. A child who stayed seated, for religious reasons or political ones, was sent to the principal and given a written warning that went into the permanent file. The 1943 Supreme Court ruling in West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett had already declared mandatory flag salutes unconstitutional. 31 years later, schools across the country were still enforcing them anyway, and most teachers had never read the case. Today, a homeroom teacher who wrote up a 14-year-old for not saluting would face a federal civil rights complaint. The case would settle by Friday. Number 15. Aspirin from the school nurse. The nurse's office at most American elementary schools in 1975 kept a glass jar of children's aspirin on the front desk. A kid with a headache or a stomachache or a scraped knee got 2 orange-flavored tablets and a paper cup of water. No one called home. No parental consent form. No log of what was dispensed to whom and when. A 1980 Centers for Disease Control study linking aspirin use in children to Ray's syndrome, a rare and often fatal swelling of the brain and liver, ended that practice nationwide within 5 years. By 1986, the FDA required a warning label on every children's aspirin bottle in the country. A school nurse who handed a 6-year-old 2 aspirin today would lose her license inside the week. The state nursing board would revoke her credentials before the parents picked her up. Number 14. Writing lines for talking in class. A 4th-grade teacher in a suburban New England town in 1977 had a standing rule that every child in the building knew by the end of the first week. A student who talked out of turn wrote the sentence 100 times on the chalkboard during recess. I will not talk in class. I will not talk in class. The board filled with the same sentence in shaky cursive while the other children played kickball outside. The teacher graded it after the bell rang. A messy line meant another 25 copies the following day. The chalk dust dried on the child's shirt and the mother scrubbed it off at the sink that evening for a nickel's worth of soap. The educational research literature classified the practice as ineffective by 1979. Most teachers used it anyway. The recess clock ran out the same way every Tuesday. State boards of education today flag punitive writing that strips recess as a violation of physical recess statutes. Number 13. The single bathroom pass per period. The hallway smelled of chlorine and pine salt. The bathroom door at the end of the corridor stayed locked between the bells, and only the kid holding the wooden pass could open it. The rule was 1 pass per classroom per 50 minutes. If the first child had taken it, the second child waited until the bell. Some teachers refused passes outright. A medical excuse from a parent had to be on file in the front office. Today, a teacher who denied a child a bathroom break without medical reason would face a state child welfare investigation by the next school board meeting. Number 12. Gender-segregated PE with weigh-ins. In September 1974, a Midwestern 7th-grade child climbed onto the scale in front of the gym while the coach wrote the number on a clipboard in black marker. Girls did calisthenics in the small gym. Boys did wrestling in the big one. Both groups got weighed on the first day of the unit, with the number called out loud and written on a clipboard the coach carried for the rest of the semester. The clipboard sat on the bleachers during basketball. Other children walked past it. Federal Title IX regulations issued in 1975 specifically required equal access to PE facilities. Co-ed PE became standard by 1982. Today, a coach who called out a child's weight to the gym would be in a meeting with the district superintendent the same afternoon. Number 11. Lead paint walls and asbestos tiles. Look up at the ceiling of any American public school built in the post-war boom before 1972. Look down at the floor. Until federal regulation arrived, ceiling tiles were sprayed with asbestos for fire resistance and acoustic dampening. Wall paint contained measurable lead. Drinking fountains ran through lead solder joints. The Toxic Substances Control Act of 1976 began the asbestos phase-out. The Lead-Based Paint Poisoning Prevention Act of 1971 banned residential lead paint. School renovation funds did not arrive until the late 80s. The EPA today calls it a federal hazard. The building must be evacuated. Number 10. School day prayer over the intercom. Coming through the speaker bolted to the wall above the chalkboard at a public elementary in the rural Deep South in 1973, the morning announcement opened with a reading from the King James Bible and a recited Lord's Prayer. The 1962 Supreme Court ruling in Engel v. Vitale and the 1963 ruling in Abington v. Schempp had already declared school-sponsored prayer in public schools unconstitutional. 11 years later, the intercom still ran the morning prayer. Enforcement was a federal matter. Federal lawyers had other priorities. A public school principal who scheduled morning prayer over the intercom today would be a named defendant in an ACLU complaint inside a single news cycle. Number 9. No seatbelts on the yellow bus. The bench seat on a 1974 International Harvester school bus had a vinyl cushion, a metal back, and no belt of any kind. 40 children sat 3 to a bench on the way to and from school every day. A post-war commitment to free transit to school had bus fleets expanding faster than safety rules could catch them. Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 222, issued in 1977, required compartmentalization, the high padded seatbacks that became standard but did not require seat belts. 6 states added belt rules in the 80s. The rest waited. A 2018 federal proposal would require 3-point belts on every new school bus sold in the country. The yellow bus from 1974 had a steel dashboard, a steering wheel without a collapsible column, and not one piece of restraint hardware. 40 children rode it daily. Number 8. The half-pint milk requirement. Every child at a public elementary in Buffalo, New York in 1975 had a half-pint carton of whole milk placed on the tray at the cafeteria, whether the family had paid the 4 cents for it or not. Lactose-intolerant children drank it anyway and spent the next 2 hours doubled over in social studies. Federal school lunch reimbursement rates were tied directly to per-pupil milk consumption, and schools wanted the money. The carton came out of a refrigerated case behind the lunch counter and slammed onto the tray. A child who refused was sent back to the line for a second one. The cafeteria cook kept the daily count on a clipboard, and the principal signed it every Friday. The USDA today treats unaccommodated dietary restrictions as a civil rights violation under Section 504. The carton stopped being mandatory by 1995. Number 7. Public report card readings. 6 weeks. That was the cycle at a small-town junior high in Iowa in 1975. The homeroom teacher stood at the front of the room and read every student's grade out loud, in order from the top of the class to the bottom. Number 7 on this list was the C- called out in the same voice as the A. The slow reader, the kid with the new glasses, the boy whose dad had left in October, all sat at the same desks and listened. The Federal Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, passed in 1974 and made student educational records confidential by federal law. A teacher who read out grades by name today would be facing a FERPA violation. The termination notice would arrive next. Number 6. Coaches as school-wide disciplinarians. You, hallway, now. That was the phrase a football coach in a Pittsburgh public high school in 1974 used to pull any student, athlete or not, from any classroom in the building, regardless of subject or teacher. Coaches in the post-war public school held discipline authority that ran across the entire school the way a sergeant runs a barracks. A coach could paddle a senior, suspend a sophomore, and run a freshman child until he threw up in the gym trash can, all in one afternoon. No formal training. No oversight committee, no grievance process. The athletic department reported to the principal, who reported to the superintendent, who reported to a school board that met twice a month. State teacher conduct boards today require certified discipline protocols and documented training hours. Number 5. The PE shaming list. The smell of dial soap and sweat sat heavy over the locker room wall at a public middle school in Minneapolis in 1976, and the poster board list in red marker sat right next to the schedule for the boys' basketball team. A 7th grader who could not finish the mile run in under 12 minutes had the name written on the list by the coach. The list stayed up for the rest of the semester. Kids who appeared on it ran the mile again every Friday during 6th period until the time dropped. The 1979 Surgeon General's Report on Health and Disease Prevention specifically warned against shame-based physical education for kids. State child welfare statutes today treat public weight or fitness shaming of a minor as actionable abuse. Number 4. Knuckle-rapping with a ruler. Look at the wooden ruler on a 1974 4th grade teacher's desk in suburban Long Island. The ruler had a metal edge. It was 18 inches long and slightly warped from years of use. A student who fidgeted, who held a pencil wrong, who failed to raise a hand before speaking, who slumped, who tapped a foot, got the ruler across the knuckles. The strike left a red welt that lasted through lunch. The child rinsed the hand under cold water and the welt cooled by the bell. Some teachers struck the palm, some struck the back of the hand. The school nurse dried the hand with a paper towel and sent the child back to class. A 1977 Carnegie Council report on classroom discipline documented the practice in 71% of surveyed elementary schools. State teacher conduct boards by 1990 had banned any physical contact during a corrective lesson in 38 states. The remaining states quietly stopped reporting the practice. A teacher who rapped a child's knuckles with a wooden ruler today would be in handcuffs. The dismissal bell would not save him. Number 3. The pledge with a hand-on-heart inspection. In a 5th grade classroom in suburban Atlanta in 1976, the homeroom teacher walked the rows during the pledge to check that every right hand was placed correctly over every heart. A hand on the wrong side, a hand in a pocket, a hand limp at the side. Each one got a verbal correction in front of the class. Repeated violations got a note sent home to the parents in a folded envelope. The Barnett ruling from 1943 had been law for 33 years by then. The teacher walked the rows anyway, the same way her own teacher had walked the rows in 1948. Federal civil rights complaints today take 6 weeks to process. A teacher who policed the position of an 11-year-old's hand during the pledge would be on a Department of Education watch list. 2 offenses, that is all it takes. Number 2. The smoking yard for high schoolers. The southwest corner of a large public high school in Long Beach in 1975 had a fenced patch of asphalt, a couple of picnic tables, and a coffee can full of sand. The administration called it the senior court. The seniors called it the smoking yard. A child 16 and over with a signed parental permission slip smoked cigarettes between classes and at lunch. The slip was a single sheet of mimeographed paper with a checkbox and a parent's signature, brewed in the school office on a ditto machine. The 1981 Smoke-Free Schools Act in California ended the practice statewide. Other states held on through the 80s. The 1994 Pro-Children Act made indoor smoking in any educational facility a federal violation, but the outdoor smoking yard at the edge of campus had already disappeared on its own. Today, a public school that designated a campus smoking area for minors would face state and federal sanctions. The yard would close by the next bell. Number 1. Corporal punishment without parental notice. Closing this list with the rule that contained all the others. A public school in Arkansas in 1974 could paddle a child, suspend a child, search a child's locker, weigh a child in front of the gym, deny a child the bathroom, and call out the child's failing grade by name, all in a single school day without a single phone call to a parent. The discipline slip went into a file cabinet in the principal's office and stayed there until the child graduated. The mother of that child never got the form sent home. A parent conference letter cost a dime in 1974, and most schools did not spend it. The 1974 Federal Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act began the shift toward parental notification. The 1977 Ingram versus Wright ruling required the school to inform the parent in some districts. By 1990, the rule had reversed across most of the country. The Arkansas hallway from 1974 would not survive a Monday morning today. Try paddling a student today in any classroom in America, and the building will empty into a parking lot full of squad cars before lunch. 25 rules, one generation. The students from that generation grew up to write the laws that ended every rule on this list. The faculty lounge has a coded badge reader now. The smoking yard is teacher parking. A retired principal donated the dunce stool to the local historical society in 2003. The hallway is quieter, and the kid in the back row gets the bathroom pass when she asks. Drop a comment with the rule from your own school that should have died sooner.